Hello! I am back here to talk to you about books. Now, what was I going to say? I actually have quite a few single review videos which I'm planning to film soon, but I thought it would be nice to just give you a taste of what I've been reading recently, because I read a lot of things that I really liked, so that's good. Book number 1 is The Loop by Ben Oliver, which came out this month actually, and it's a sci-fi young adult book. It's about this boy named Luca who lives in the future, and he is stuck in the loop, which is a prison. The prison isn't great, and that is an understatement. Every 6 months they have the chance to decide if they would like the death sentence or if they would like to be experimented on. So, like I said, not great. Other than that, life in the loop is pretty boring. You basically wake up, eat, have all your energy drained from you, and then go back to bed. In the first part of the book, we get to know Luca and several of the other characters. The story, however, really starts when the loop sort of shuts down. Also, I forgot to mention that what makes this prison also very special is that it is controlled by artificial intelligence. But yeah, moving on. The loop shuts down, and Luca, together with some of the other prisoners, trying to break out, and that's when they realize that the loop isn't the only thing that has broken down. Now, I really enjoyed this book. I don't really read a lot of young adult fiction, so I can't really compare to other books, but I wouldn't be surprised if this one is one of the better ones out there. There are a lot of interesting topics in here with regards to technology, AI. How far do we want to incorporate this type of technology in our lives, and what is the negative side of that? You also have politics. The prisoners here have the choice between the death penalties or being experimented on, and those experiments are used for the benefit of the upper class. But besides all of that, it's just a great adventure. I hadn't expected it to be as gory as it was, but I was actually a huge fan of that. So yeah, it's a really interesting adventure, and I'm very excited that this is just the first book in a trilogy. So I believe the second book is supposed to come out next year, so I'll definitely be reading that when it comes out. Book number 2 is Kokoro by Natsume Soseki, and I actually read this one for my diverse classics book club, which I'm hosting over on my Patreon, and I really enjoyed this book. It's actually the best-selling novel in Japan, and what really surprises me is that Natsume Soseki isn't really popular outside of Japan. I mean, if you look at people like Haruki Murakami or Banana Yoshimoto or Sayaka Murata, it feels like more people are reading their works than, I don't know, people like Soseki or Osamu Dazai. But then again, those are all contemporary writers, so it makes sense. Anyway, back to the book. You have two main characters, an unnamed narrator and the man who he refers to as Sensei, which is a title you give like a mentor or a teacher, someone above you in Japan. either way, this book is about the relationship between these two men. In the first part, the unnamed narrator describes his relationship with Sensei, how it started and how it developed. Shortly after graduating, this narrator is forced to go back to the rural side of Japan because his father, who lives there, is basically dying. And so the second part is about him and his family, and then in the third part you have this really long confession of Sensei, because the thing with this man is that he is very mysterious. He doesn't like talking about his past, but clearly it has had a huge impact on him, because he basically hates society, and that also makes the relationship remarkable, because this narrator manages to break through and still have some sort of friendship with this man. So yeah, that's basically what this book was about. I really enjoyed having this as a book club pick, because that meant that I got to do research on Natsume. Natsume was a very interesting author. He was actually born around the start of the Meiji era, which was in the second half of the 19th century, and that was also the time that Japan actually opened its borders again to the outside world. So it was a time of a lot of changes, and with those changes came a lot of struggle as well. For instance, the influence of Western culture, where individualism is very important, and that sort of clashes with the collectivism or communal spirit of Japan or Japanese society, to put it that way. And just the feeling of that is very strong in Kokoro. Book number 3 is Cog by Greg van Eekhout, and I actually got this book because I wanted to do like a fun vlog reading like Nebula finalists, and I don't know what happened to that. But I read Cog, and it's a middle grade book, and I really liked it. Again, the topic here is technology. You have this 7-month robot that looks actually like a 12-year-old boy. This robot's name is Cog, and he lives together with his creator, who is teaching him like various things, just like a human being, like how to shop and the meaning of words, etc, etc. And then Cog makes one mistake, and he is separated from his creator and put in this laboratory with people who don't really seem to have the best intentions, and so he decides to recruit a couple of other robots and escape and try and find his creator again. And yeah, I just thought this was a great middle grade book. Again, just like in The Loop, you have this same question of what are the dangers when it comes to technology, the advancement of it, what are the negative side effects. So I thought that was splendidly done, especially for a book for children. Yeah, and it was really funny, very adventurous, so yeah, it was just a really good book. Book 4 is Monster, She Wrote by Lisa Kruger and Melanie R. Anderson, and this is actually a non-fiction book, and it just covers a lot of the women within horror and speculative fiction, and I really enjoyed this book. It was a great resource for me. I managed to find so many interesting authors who I personally think are underrated and aren't really recognized for their contributions to the horror and speculative fiction genre. So I'm very happy with this book, and I'll definitely be coming back to it in the future. Yeah, book 4 is Miss Ice Sandwich by Miyako Kawakami, and this is a little novella. It's actually part of a 6-piece collection from Pushkin Press, all Japanese novella. As you can see, this book cover is really cute, and the other 5 are as well. Either way, this book is about a little boy who becomes obsessed with this woman who works in a supermarket and makes ice sandwiches. He's mesmerized by how well she does her work, as well as her ice blue eyelids. And yeah, that's kind of the synopsis. The book, however, is more so about this boy being confronted with the realities of this world. He's been through a lot at such a young age. His father has passed away, and so now he lives together with his mother and his paternal grandmother. And his mother really isn't a very attentive parent. She doesn't really pay him a lot of attention. And his grandmother, who he adores, her health is sadly deteriorating. And so you see how this boy has to cope with all of this. And I don't really want to say that it's a really sad story, but also it is kind of a sad story. I don't know, it's just kind of like life, really. It's incredibly relatable because, I mean, all of us go through that phase from being these little innocent beings who don't really understand everything that is going on in the world, and then slowly coming to understand like the dark things in life, the bad things in life. It's really heartbreaking, but like I said, very relatable as well. But yeah, it was a really good read, and I'd actually love to read more from this author. They recently had a new novel published in English called, I believe, Breast and Eggs, so I will keep an eye out for that one. Moving on to Prodigal Son by John Patrick Shanley. I read this play because I wanted to use the monologue for my audition at the National Youth Theatre, and yeah, I read this quite a few weeks ago, and I don't really remember all that much. Well, it's about this boy who comes from the Bronx. He is a troubled boy, but actually quite gifted, and so he receives a scholarship at this school that is apparently very posh, and he doesn't fit in, and he keeps breaking rules and drinking alcohol, and that causes conflict between the person who extended the scholarship towards him, as well as I believe like the principal. And that's kind of like what this play is all about. It is, I believe, autobiographical. Yeah, I don't know, I wasn't really invested in it, so I don't really have much to say, to be honest. Yes, moving on. I read Catherine House by Elizabeth Thomas, and this is a gothic novel about a girl who gets admitted to this very, very elite school in like hidden in some place in America in the woods. They lose all contact from the outside world for 3 years. They can do basically whatever they like on campus, party, drink, etc, etc. And the main character is actually running away from her past because it's actually quite troubled, and she ends up at the school, and she realizes that there's something far more dark and sinister going on there. And yeah, it was really interesting. I've really been getting into more gothic fiction. I actually listened to Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier a couple of days ago and absolutely loved it. It's become one of my favorite books, and I would really love to just read it for myself. But yeah, this was really good. I really enjoyed the gothic themes of like an old house, the gloomy weathers, the woods, and like even the food kind of like had this gothic vibe to it. So yeah, I really enjoyed that one. I also read How to Pronounce Knife by Sufankam Tamafongsa. She's a Lao Canadian author, and it's a collection of short stories, mainly focused on the immigrant experience, the Lao immigrant experience, and yeah, I thought it was really interesting. It was definitely very relatable for me. I also got to do a bit more research on Laos because I actually didn't really know that much about the country, so it was really interesting getting to know the history as well. So yeah, I do have to note though, even though I really enjoyed the stories, none of them really stuck with me. I don't know why actually, but that's not necessarily a bad thing, because in the end, like, why do you read? You read for enjoyment. So yeah, I enjoyed it, so I'm very happy that I read it. Then I also read Days of Distraction by Alexandra Chang, and this is a book about a Chinese American woman who is working as a tech reporter in, I believe, LA, and she is struggling in her career. It's very hard for her to break through. There's racism and misogyny that she has to deal with, and yeah, she's living together with her boyfriend who is white, so they're in an interracial relationship, and he is actually applying for a PhD, and eventually he gets accepted to do a PhD, but on the other side of America in upstate New York. And so she decides to go along with him, and so you travel along with her on this journey. And yeah, this book really focuses on race, racism, interracial relationships, and yeah, just identity as well. And yeah, there's just so many interesting themes in here. I really enjoyed reading this book. Despite not being Asian, there were a lot of things with regards to race that I could really relate to, also with regards to like interracial relationships. And yeah, it was just, like I said, very interesting. I also got to talk to Alexandra about her book, and yeah, it was just a great conversation, and yeah, I'm very happy to have read the book. I also read The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Frick. And I actually finished this a couple of days ago, and it was really interesting. I've actually been reading a lot of non-fiction, more specifically self-help books, and this was definitely one of my favorites. I definitely learned a lot from reading the book. One of the most important things was taking responsibility, but also within a reasonable scope. For me, I was definitely thinking more in terms of feelings. Like, you can't really do much about external factors, but you can decide how you'll respond to it. And I feel like that also has to do with like stoicism, and I have 2 books on that which I'm planning to read pretty soon, so I'm very excited for that. But yeah, these were just a couple of the books that I've read recently. I hope you enjoyed this video, and yeah, catch you later. A huge thank you to Barbara, Chris, Diane, Jen, Nikolai and Tara for supporting me over on Patreon.